Are we live?
We are.
Oh, hi
We
everybody.
are.
Okay. I'll just stand back. How's that?
Whatever is comfortable for you. I like
Uh,
your hair.
What's that?
I like your
Oh,
hair.
thanks. I go through every color of blonde. This is my winter blonde, so thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to have you, and we will just jump
Sure.
right in. So today we are talking about, it's a series that you have previously published,
Yep.
but now it's published by Traditional and new covers. So we're talking about the first two books, but can you give us like a general synopsis of the series?
Well, it's mafia romance, and I would qualify it as it's not super dark. There's not a lot of really dark stuff in there, but there is a lot of, it's spicy. And it does have Russian mobsters, Irish mobsters, La Cosa Nostra. We've got all the good stuff going on in there, and a lot of banter and kind of funny stuff too. So it's kind of medium mafia, not too dark, not too light.
Well, I was going to ask this towards the end, but since I've already kind of brought it up, let's talk about like how it came to be under Bramble, which is who's publishing it now. So like, how did that happen?
Well, they actually reached out to me. The series, when I published it, I think Mafia Romance was really having a moment, which I kind of didn't know. I published it, I think, in 2022, 2021, 2022, and that was when Book Talk was really huge, and I wasn't even on TikTok then, and just started getting a lot of recommendations by readers, and I'm like, oh, these books are selling really well. So that was kind of nice. So my editor from Bramble just emailed me out of the blue one day. I was on a writing retreat up at Lake Tahoe, and she emailed me and she said, we love these books and we'd like to acquire them along with Pen Pal, and we'd also like you to write something new for us. And so I said, great. And part of that, is new covers and new bonus content and some new editorial tweaks and things like that. So that's how it all came to be, and they're out now. Yeah.
That's so exciting. But it's just the first two, and I can't remember the publishing schedule of the next books.
The next two will be out April 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're also pretty.
Thank you. Aren't those sprayed edges neat? That's kind of the new thing. And
Yeah.
the covers are great too. So yeah, I'm really happy with how they turned out.
Well, I love them. So you said that you wrote these back in 2022. Do you remember what your inspiration was, or was it just kind of like, this is fun, let's do it?
Well, I had written a Mafia duet right before. That was the Beautifully Cruel series. And I really enjoyed that, playing around in that world, because morally gray characters, especially these guys, they're outside the law, and you can really have a lot of fun writing that. And so I decided I just kind of wanted to continue along in that vein, because I was really getting a little bit more into spicier stories and a little bit darker stories. As I continue writing as an author, there's just like, my writing keeps getting darker and spicier. So
I remember the last time we talked, you mentioned that too, and you were saying how readers just kind of keep wanting more spice, and you said, I guess I'm just gonna have to see what we can do, and
yeah.
I guess it's happening.
It is, and I'm becoming more comfortable with it. Again, it's like anything that you do repetitively, you become a little bit more comfortable with the world. And I've been reading books that are a lot darker and spicier too. So I'm kind of immersing myself in that type of genre. But it's a lot of fun to write.
Well, I don't want to make any assumptions, but if I had to guess, I would assume you didn't go live the mafia lifestyle to research these books. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, I couldn't tell you if I did that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of research would you potentially have had to do to kind of write mafia romance?
Well, I think we're all a little bit culturally versed in some kind of mafia light, at least with the movies that we've seen and things like that. But, from there was a lot of Googling, and you'd be surprised what you can learn on Wikipedia and Google. And, I started doing all these deep dives into, Russian mafia, the prison system in Russia and all the, it's crazy, this stuff. But That was also a lot of fun too, because they have all these pictures of real life mobsters and their prison tattoos and all that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff out on the internet that you can really get yourself into.
So let's just hope no one has to see your search history and you'll be okay.
Yes, exactly. Oh, my search history is insane. It's insane. I should actually look at it and take like a screenshot and post it somewhere, because the things that I look up during the course of a day are pretty funny.
I believe it. I'm sure people would have the best time seeing that.
Yeah, I might have to do that.
So I've only read the first two, which is, I mean, they're the two that are out, so that's why we're talking about them. But
Yep.
for this, for Carnal Urges, you lay the groundwork for it within the first book, Ruthless Creatures. Did you already know like exactly how it was going to go writing the first book, or like did it evolve? And how do you leave room to
Oh,
evolve while giving writer or readers like enough information?
well, I never intended it to be a series when I first started writing it. I thought Ruthless Creatures was going to be a standalone. But sometimes what happens is that these side characters are so compelling that I want to write their stories. And Sloane was one of those side characters. So her relationship with Nat, I thought, was kind of core to the series, and I really just liked her so much that I wanted to have something fun happen with her in the next book, and I decided to pair her up with a really, kind of controlling and uptight mobster, Declan, who she's totally, unimpressed by and is not scared by, and watching that whole dynamic, that was a lot of fun to write. So yeah, I just wrote that. In fact, I don't even think I put that epilogue of the second book. I don't think I put that in when I first published it, because I hadn't had written the next book yet. I think I went back and said, okay, here's going to be the first chapter of book 2, and I went back and put that in. So that's how that started, and then from there, all the different mobsters started introducing themselves, and it became a series.
That makes a lot of sense. I can totally see that now. So Nat and Sloane, they are best friends. You learn that very quickly in the first book.
Yeah.
I also think they're very different, but
Mhm.
like that's how best friends work a lot of the time. So I'm curious to know what it was like and why you wanted to tell the story of two strong women within this like very macho, violent culture and environment when it comes to like their romantic partners.
Well, first of all, I'd like to have female relationships in all of as many as I can in all of my books, because they're a good foil. A lot of times it provides a lot of comic relief when you have a dark kind of theme book. Then you can get with your girlies and you can hash it out and talk about how crazy it all is, So I kind of like to do that. But Nat and Sloane are both kind of your everyday gals, but each one of them has had a tragedy in her background, different in different ways. And Nat kind of chose to, I don't know, marinate in it. She never moved past it. But Sloane was a different personality who really didn't want to let her tragedies define her, or she didn't want to become a victim. So having the two of them, they kind of supported each other a lot. And I think that added a lot to the book. So,
I loved how in like the first book, it's kind of also like a mystery because,
mhm.
you know, something happens in Nat's life and you learn it very quickly, but you're just kind of like, what is going on here? How is this happening? And I think that Nat, like you said, or Sloane, kind of adds a lot of comedic relief to the heaviness of Nat's story for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Friendship dynamics, aside from the comedic relief, is that something that like is really important for you to write about, and how do you kind of navigate mapping out these friendships?
Well, every author is different with this, but for me, I usually do not, I never plot a book. Like, I just start with two characters in a conflict, and I sort of get to know them, and I let it go from there. And I come up with a lot of surprises that way, and I think it's more surprising for the reader too, because I have no idea where it's going either. And sometimes I will have to backtrack and say, okay, that didn't work. Let's go back down this road. But I do like having strong friendships. I think it's realistic, and it's healthy for women to read about other women with strong friendships. And none of them have to be perfect. Obviously, these are not perfect characters. They've all got scars and backstories and things that they wish they could better about themselves. And I think that's important to show in my stories too, because I am writing for women. So I think at least these ladies should be relatable on some level.
Well, two characters in a conflict sounds like a podcast for like
Oh yeah, it does. We should start that.
I
I
would
like
love
that
to.
idea. Okay, I'm in.
Well, we kind of already touched on this, but the spice and intimacy, in these books specifically is not lacking. It's there, it's present. And I want to know why you think it's important to explore this idea of intimacy and physical relationships, and especially highlight women that are enjoying like pleasure without being ashamed about it.
Well, that's the whole thing, isn't it, really? In our society, there is a whole stigma about sex. And even though a lot of us may think that we're very liberated when it comes to sex, it's still hard to have these conversations with your significant other or if you're starting dating or what have you. So I think it's healthy for women to see other women, even if they're fictional women, exploring their sexuality kind of in a safe way. And I try with my books, there's no non-con. There might be a little bit of dub-con, but at least they're still talking about it. To me, that's a little bit safer than the really dark stuff, which I generally tend not to read, but it is also a lot of fun. Um, but yeah, I think it's important for women in general and men to just acknowledge that, hey, look, we're all sexual beings. There's nothing wrong with it. We can talk about it, and it doesn't have to be weird. And I think you're seeing that a lot in movies now, and in Netflix series. I haven't seen it yet, but I really want to see the movie with Nicole Kidman, Baby Girl. It's getting rave reviews, and I love it that she's an older woman. She's my age, actually, and she, strikes up this sexual relationship with a 20-something-year-old intern. And I think there's a lot of women who are interested in watching that and reading about it. So I think it's good. And it's really funny too, as an author, people that I know in real life, a lot of them are uncomfortable with the fact that I write, they don't know what to make of it. I had one lady like, "Oh, you look like such a librarian." I would never imagine. It's like, come on, dude, everybody's having sex. You're having sex. I'm not like, it doesn't have to be weird. So that's the long answer.
No, I like it. I'm glad that you kind of elaborated on that. I do think it's so important. Like you said, it's not like it's such a big part of many people's lives. So to pretend and like it's just not happening or keep it a secret, it's like what's the point of that? Let's just talk about this and
Yeah.
maybe I'll learn something, you'll learn something, we'll go from there.
Yeah. And I think it can actually be psychologically damaging too for people who have so much shame surrounding it, whether they were brought up in that environment or they're just not comfortable with their own body. Because these are tricky things to navigate. But the more that we the more that we normalize conversations about sex, the better I think it is for everyone. So.
I agree with you. Well, you you mentioned Pen Pal, which I also read last year, and so good. Like the twists and everything, they're so great. But that made me wonder, what is, and I know that this you didn't start planning it to be a series, but what is like the biggest challenge between writing standalone versus series?
Series, you have to keep all the details straight between each book, and every once in a while I'll mix up somebody's name and I'll start calling, Declan Liam or something. So those little things, your brain just kind of does a little brain fart. And the longest series I ever did was 6 books long, and I actually created a little series Bible with everybody's positions and names and how they were related to things like that. Standalones, I usually have an easier time with, although in series I'm already familiar with the characters. So in one way, it's a little bit easier to write, but there's a lot more detail that you have to pay attention to. But standalones are fun because I can just follow my muse. If there's some random weird idea, I can just write it and get it out, and I don't have to worry. Like Pen Pal, I don't have to worry about there's going to be a sequel because, well, there can't be in Pen Pal. you know.
It would be difficult for sure.
Yeah, I made a joke about it in one of my decompression. I think the Pen Pal decompression group on Facebook. I'm like, yeah, Pen Pal Afterlife, and everybody thought I was serious. And they're like, "Oh my God, she's writing a." No, I'm not writing a sequel to that book.
Yeah, don't tease people.
I
They'll get
know.
their feelings.
They take it seriously. They do.
Um, if readers could take away one thing from this series, what would you want it to be?
Oh gosh, I think every reader takes away different things from each book. I know a lot of readers have responded a lot to Sloane, and they also responded a lot to Raina in the fourth book, which hasn't come out yet. But a lot of these situations deal with women who are very strong and intelligent, but who might be in situations where they can't actually flex those muscles as much as they want to. And so they're sort of struggling against that. So I guess maybe just sort of, I mean, I don't want to say hope because I'm not writing inspirational novels, but there is an element of hope there, and seeing yourself in a character and watching the character grow, and maybe you feel like you can do that too. So hopefully somebody will be inspired to find their missing fiance.
Yeah, well, I mean, you never know. There's pieces of every book that can be relatable somehow. So,
True. Yeah, true.
so not only, we've talked already about how Bramble is republishing these and you're writing something else for them, but you also still are publishing on your own. You're doing things like this to market. You actually have to write the books. So how do you manage to do it all?
I do have, well, first of all, I'm sort of anal about, I make a lot of lists, a lot of to-do lists. I have software that keeps track of my word count, so I know where I am and how far out I have to look at the deadline and things like that. But before I became a writer, I was always an entrepreneur. My husband and I owned a flower shop in LA for 20 years. And so I'm used to juggling a lot of different things and wearing a lot of different hats. So to me, it sort of comes naturally. The only time that I really get overwhelmed, and this is partly my fault because I procrastinate. So I usually get overwhelmed as the deadline looms because I'll usually write most of the book like in the last month before it's due. So, but that's just, one of those personal foibles. If I could get better at not procrastinating, it would make everyone's life easier, I think. But I like marketing, so that's a fun thing for me to do. But yeah.
It does surprise me to hear that you are not a plotter, but you're also very meticulous in other areas.
Hmm.
That's so.
Yeah, that is, I think, a conscious choice. I did try to plot a novel one time, and it ended up being like 10 pages of an outline, and I hated the process so much. I felt it was very stifling, that I totally abandoned. I never wrote the book. And so I really like to allow myself creative license and let myself fool around with the process. So I can do that creatively. And then, afterwards I can go back and I can edit if I think things aren't really working out. But yeah, I definitely have a little bit of a psychotic personality there, very different, but it works.
I often do wonder if the time and effort it takes to outline a book would make you kind of just like not interested in writing it anymore. So
Well,
I'm sure it's that way for some
yeah,
people.
some authors cannot do a pantser novel because they just feel like they have no idea where they're going, and maybe they waste too much time going down a road where they shouldn't go. But I mean, now I think I've written 34 novels and I've published 32. So I have learned to trust myself, and I've learned not to second guess my process. So it's just easier that way.
You know yourself. You know what you're doing.
I do.
Um,
Well, some days.
Someone asked how you're able to balance like reading for your own pleasure and then also like maybe doing, I think I'm understanding it correctly, but like reading for work and inspiration and stuff like that.
Well, I'm a voracious reader. I mean, I grew up in a household of readers, and so I actually almost feel like I'm more of a reader than I am a writer. I've read so many books, and I can read very, very fast. So I can usually finish a book in a day. And the other thing is, a lot of books I will just DNF. If I pick it up and within the first two chapters it doesn't catch me, I'll put it down because there's always something else that I can read. So I kind of allow myself that freedom. But I don't know. I think as you learn your craft, and as you kind of go along in the business of writing, because it is an art but it's also a business, you learn what your strengths are and your weaknesses are. And I take a bath every night and I always read in the bathtub, so that's how I get a lot of my reading done. But
I so wish that I had the strength to DNF a book. It's like my it's my toxic trait. I cannot do it. And so I will just like power through, but I aspire to DNF.
Well, as an author, as a creator, I think I almost read books differently now. I read them a little bit more clinically because I'm aware of the use of language, and it takes a lot for me to get lost in a story because I know all the technical behind the scenes stuff that the writer is doing, and if I feel like it's a little bit clumsy or if I just feel like the language isn't sophisticated or whatever, I just toss it. I go to the next thing.
Well, that is something to aspire to. I love it. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to know what's next for you.
This year is busy actually. So we just had the first two books in the Queens of Monsters series release. The next two books come out in April. And I just found out from my publisher that all the audiobooks with all the new content will go live in April as well. And then in the summer, I've got Beg for Me coming, which is book 3 in the Morley Gray series. Yay! And that is an age gap romance. She's older. And that was a lot of fun to write. I can't wait to hear what readers think about that because it's, I'm kind of into the older woman, younger man thing at the moment. And then I've got a deal, something fun coming out with Montlake Romance that we haven't, the ink isn't dry on those contracts yet, but that should be around fall spooky season. And then November 4th, we've got Blackthorn coming out, which is my standalone with Bramble. And this is my hardcover debut. This is the first time I've been in print in hardcover. So I'm really excited for that. And that romance, I'm telling everyone, it's so weird. I'm calling it a phantasmagoric because it's very genre bending. It's like a fever dream and it's like a hallucination, the whole book. So I can't wait to hear what readers think about it.
Wow. That is a lot going on. I personally am so excited for Beg for Me. I'm excited for them all, but I'm very excited
Yeah.
for that one. I hope that you're able to like get some rest and relax this year too, though.
Oh, I totally relax all the time. Believe me, I take naps. I sleep like 10 hours a night. Oh yeah, I'm very relaxed. I'm very rested. Last year I did so much travel that I'm like, this year I'm going to take it easy. So yeah, but thank you.
Get those baths in, get those 10 hours
Oh,
in, you're good to go.
oh yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Everyone, you need to pick up the new editions, even if you have read them already. Get them, they're beautiful. And the next ones come out in April. And yeah, we'll do this again, I'm sure. It's so much fun.
I would love
Thank you
to.
for having me.
Oh,
Or
thank you
thank
for
you
having
for joining
me.
me. All
I
right.
love it. Thank
I'll
you.
see you guys later.
See you.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.